And all of the scenes of the plant and everything of the plant with me in it are shot at 16 frames per second. So that, because they could not form the words fast enough.
Oh, wow.
So it was all, the music, the lyrics were, the soundtrack was harmonized up so you could hear it properly. And the whole thing was shot slowly, and we just moved slowly. And then when they ran it back, it was up to speed. But that would not be done like that. You would just do all the lip movements CGI now.
Yeah.
And also, the thing I made a mistake on also, and I learned, is that in theater, they were killed, and then they came out for a bow. Here, they were killed. They didn't come out for a bow. So, to make it short, everything was wonderful until we killed Ellen's character and Rick's character, and then it was an icebox. It was a disaster, a total disaster.
Looking at all of the various costumes and situations in this movie, you can almost see that within a year or so, this is going to be playing at midnight with everybody dressing up now like dentists and harlots, I think they were called, rather than Rocky Horror Picture Show. This movie is going to run for a long time. I'd like to see it again tonight, which is always the acid test.
And Warner Brothers, actually, it's a coup.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers, not because they decided they wanted a happy ending, but David Geffen, Warner Brothers, and Frank Oz, of course, decided, no, we have spent a lot of time filming this, but we want to refilm it because it just doesn't work. It's too heavy.
And are you glad that you didn't die then?
Well, there are pros and cons.
No time for the clip.
Good. Forget the clip. People don't want to see clips, do you? No! You don't want to see the clip. You want to see the movie.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. The movie's really just a lot of clips together.
You're the...
You gotta stop him. This is either he comes with me or it's over.
Yeah, you can travel with Anton. You're the star of the film.
No, the plant is the star of the film.
Is the star.
Levi Stubbs, who's lead singer of the Four Tops, is the voice of the plant.
Okay. And Steve Martin is in it. Bill Murray
does the thing in it. Jim Belushi's in it. John Candy's in it. Christopher Guest is in it. And Ellen Green, who did the off-Broadway show.
Nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you.
Congratulations on your family.
Thank you very much.
Rick Moranis, kids. We'll be back here with Jeff Cesario.
Suddenly Seymour is standing beside you. Suddenly Seymour.
It's a little too like tinny. Hers was like suddenly Seymour.
It's very, that's true. She does excellent vocal work in this role. From top to bottom, Ellen Green is a star.
I had to write it down that like her speaking voice and her singing voice are two completely different people, and it's so
funny.
They don't make Ellen Greens anymore. They really don't.
They really truly, Molly, you have in our notes that we should discuss who would be Audrey 1 of today, and I cannot find like a 1 for 1 Ellen Green of today.
Yeah, I truly can't.
It's very
hard. It's hard to imagine anyone else.
Welcome back yet again. It's the end of the month. It's spooky season, so what better way to get into the feel of Halloween, Halloween, than Little Shop of Horrors, the 1986 cult classic, directed by Frank Oz. This is my first time seeing this movie, so it was a rare episode of Showgays where I've never seen this movie before.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you had seen a performance of it? A stage version?
I watched a you know how all good theater is. You see a high school version do it, and at a young age where the plant literally scars you probably for the rest of your...
Were you actually afraid of the plant in the show you saw? Wow.
Yes. I had to be in like first grade. Like I was like young. And I know it's like goofy, but I think it's still in that like kind of like, even as like a little kid, like there are some parts of Scooby-Doo where it's like a little scary. So I think it's like kind of,
Molly's just like,
was
never really
when I
scared.
think horror, I think Scooby-Doo.
Molly's look just like pure, like,
I'm a real scaredy cat with horror things, but I don't recall ever being genuinely afraid in a Scooby-Doo episode. So I don't know.
Well,
minor 49er.
Okay, maybe not the original, but there was like the Scooby-Doo straight to video movie called Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island, where it was like the first time I remember as like a young kid where there was a Scooby-Doo thing that I watched that the villain was like real, like they were like actually zombies, and I was like, this is horrifying.
Yeah,
what are we doing?
You can't unmask zombies.
You can't unmask.
That's so funny because I think of Scooby-Doo as being so specifically about that whole it's never actually supernatural in the end that I use it in my classes sometimes to call it the Scooby-Doo effect, because I have taught by weird circumstances folklore and religious studies classes before, and there's always this like temptation to be like, but here's the real explanation for like this religious phenomenon or this like folklore phenomenon, and I have to discourage them from seeing like there's science that's real and then there's other things, and those are the made up versions of science. So I have to like get them to think more expansively than just like who's under the Scooby-Doo mask. So I don't think I knew that there were ever any Scooby-Doos in which it was actually a monster.
An actual real thing, yeah.
Well, fun fact, I recently watched a video that was 30 minutes long in which it details the history of Scooby-Doo chronologically and how the character has developed since 1969 when it first debuted, and the series in general. And it was like in the 80s, I think late 70s, early 80s, when they started having like some episodes there it was just like an actual monster, but they weren't like, it wasn't all the time.
Interesting. Send me that video.
Anyway, thank you for joining our Scooby-Doo podcast.
Zoinks. Welcome to Zoinks, our Scooby-Doo podcast.
Welcome to Rinkies. Okay, Adam, your challenge to describe the movie Little Shop of Horrors in under 1 minute starts now.
Okay, so there is a flower shop in Skid Row that a young man named Seymour works at. It is Mushnick's Flower Shop, and he is like kind of like a bumbling nobody, and he's in love with a fellow employee whose name is Audrey. He, by way of a solar eclipse at a Chinese market, discovers a plant that is very Venus flytrap in its appearance, and then it over the course of the film continues to eat blood and then turns into people. So there's like Audrey's boyfriend ends up dying in the film, and he feeds it to the plant. Mr. Mushnick, the flower shop owner, he gets fed to the plant. Basically, it's a Faustian tale in which Seymour feeds people to the plant so that he can win the affections of Audrey, who and then they live happily ever after, and there are no problems.
That's 1 minute.
No problems ever again. Just to clarify, because your phrasing was ambiguous, the plant eats blood and then that turns into the plant eating people. It sounded like maybe you were saying the plant turns into people, which would also be interesting, but it is not what happens.
Well, we can talk about the movie, the original movie, and the stage adaptations later, but
layers. We've got layers for this movie.
Layers. Okay, so as I said off the top, my relationship to this show is that I saw it like, I think I was like 6, because my sister's high school was doing it. And so we went to go see it because my sister's like friend was in the show. I don't think she was Audrey. She was probably ensemble, would be my guess. And it was, I remember being very frightened. I also am a person who doesn't like the dentist. So
yes,
the entire dentist sequence in this film, actually, like, I was very uncomfortable the whole time because I don't like all of those instruments, and then like the way they
you
feel
don't
in
like
my
going
mouth.
to the dentist in real life, so the dentist is more scary.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
that was the true horror.
The true horror was
which
was clean teeth.
I will say, I love a teeth cleaning.
I know, it's so weird.
I really do.
I hate getting my teeth cleaned at the dentist because they don't feel real when I walk out of the dentist. They feel like I'm wearing someone else's teeth.
It
like
feels
they're
like
so clean that it's like I have to keep like licking them.
Or it feels like skeleton teeth, where there's like 5 foot gaps between each tooth, and you're like, hello.
I'm sorry to break this to you, RJ, but your teeth are already skeleton teeth. That's what they are.
Yeah, skeleton famously all have teeth because teeth are bone.
Hot take, teeth are bone.
Teeth are bone. Welcome to the Dentist Podcast called Teeth Are Bone.
The DDS podcast.
That's my relationship to the show. I've never seen this movie before, so I was actually genuinely excited to see it because I know it lives in I think fondness for a lot of musical theater people, as a general understanding.
I would say it's probably a lot of people's, maybe in our generation, like their first real experience of camp, of just like bonkers comedy, like not even slapstick. Like there's a little bit of there, obviously, with like the dentist, but it feels like, at least for me, it felt like it was the first real example of like, wow, this is like off the wall kind of comedy.
Yeah, I can't think of another.
I never saw
another example.
This is our second, I should say this is our second or third if you count Buffy. This is our second horror musical because we did Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
I completely forgot about Sweeney Todd.
Yeah. Molly?
Yeah, so I remember learning these songs again at just like musical theater camps that I went to as a kid. Specifically, Suddenly Seymour, Somewhere That's Green, and I Am the Dentist. I remember learning all three of those because I did a lot of camps where it wasn't like we were doing a musical, but we would like just learn songs from musicals and like put them into a little review kind of thing. And then in concert, we would do them in concert. And I first watched the movie though in high school at like a theater party, which means that we would go up to my friend Sarah's attic and drink pop and watch movies because we were extremely lame in high school and it was wonderful. And so I watched this movie with my theater friends. So I think I don't know if I'd ever sat down and like had my full attention on the movie before, but I was certainly like aware enough of it. And then University of Wisconsin did it, I think 2 years ago now or something like that. Who knows with the pandemic. And I was.
It could have been 2 years ago. It could have been 8 weeks ago. Who knows?
But I was teaching or TAing for Intro to Theater. So my students who were all not theater students but were looking for like an arts and humanities credit all had to go see it. And then they had to write about the acting in the musical. So I read about 60 underclassmen takes on the acting of a college production of Little Shop of Horrors. So that's pretty well burned in my brain.
Were the takes like they were funny?
It was like
they did funny stuff.
I would say about 85% about Audrey's voice because it's like the clearest acting choice that's happening. So I mostly remember that.
And most people probably didn't like it.
No, it was more just like, here's how they're conveying, because I like really hit home to them. I am not asking you to review this production, which is actually why I often will have like 1 or 2 theater majors and they will always struggle on the papers because all they want to do is be like, here's my take on whether or not this was a good production. And I'm like, I don't care. I need you to tell me what the acting accomplishes, not whether or not it was good. So usually they most of them were able to avoid just being like, here's my opinion on women via Audrey's voice.
Oh no.
Well, she does have famously a shrill voice, one could say.
Well, yeah.
RJ, do you have any relationship with this show? I know you're not really a fan of musical theater.
Okay, so growing up, when I was still living in the Philippines, my good friend Chris, he had like a really nice house, like lived in a gated community. We would always go at the end of like, because our exams were quarterly. So after exams, when we would get out of like at like Wednesdays, like at, like half day or whatever, we would go to his house and then like our parents would let us stay the night. He had like a home theater, like a full room that had like a projector and like really nice seats. and his favorite movie was Little Shop of Horrors. He would always ask to watch it, and I think we always ended up just watching it like once or twice. But I was so scared of the movie that I would like watch a little bit and then go outside and be like, "Oh, I have to like use the bathroom," and then I would just like sit outside like the room and would like play around in his like play PlayStation or like hang out with like his mom, like literally did everything to ignore the movie because I was so scared. Because I remember, I don't know, I was just like so afraid of, I don't know why, it just like spooked me. And I would say this was like like second, third grade. So like a little older than Adam, but I avoided scary movies like all my life. Like I was always afraid of it. And if I had just stuck around to hear one song, I feel like I would have changed my mind. But I didn't. I was fully like, I don't know what's going on. Because I also vaguely remember like maybe him like fast forwarding his favorite scenes. Because I don't remember like the opening number. Because like even as we watched this past weekend, I love the opening number. I love Skid Row. So I was like, I don't remember this. I just remember being in his very nice house, watching this and like finding every reason not to be in that room.
I can't believe I'm the bitch with the strongest stomach in this trio right now.
Yeah,
I was
girl.
never afraid of it.
I can't even watch Squid Games. I'm too anxious for Squid Games, girl. And Adam can't do exorcisms. Well, I don't know. Can you now? I know that was like a thing growing up.
I have never seen a movie about an exorcism, and I probably have no reason to. Should we get into the we have to talk about the original musical.
Girl, you outlined the outline.
But also, I just need to talk for like very briefly because I do not want to get into the weeds on this, but we have to reference the original movie that this is based on. It was a 1960 film starring literally no one you've ever heard of except for Jack Nicholson. And he's not even I would not even say starring Jack Nicholson. I would just say he's in the movie. He plays like the weird masochistic dental patient.
The Bill Murray type.
The Bill Murray
I'd like to
character
see that scene though. That sounds cool.
Yeah. The movie's on. I read so much about this movie and this musical over the course of like 2 days. My head is filled with garbage now. I've forgotten how many family members' names because of it. Who knows? It's countless. So this movie was shot in 2 days because this director had like the set was being torn down in like 3 days or whatever. So he was like, "Oh, since the sets are still around from this movie I just made, can I use it and make another movie in 2 days?" And they're like, "Sure. I mean, what are we gonna do?"
Another prompt.
Yeah. So it's literally this is a very napkin. It's something that was written on a napkin. They just like expanded it. So it follows pretty much the same story. There's Seymour, who works in the flower shop. A bunch of people die. The plant gets bigger. In the original movie version, Audrey does not die. She kind of discovers the horror of what happened because like once the plant blooms, which is what everybody's been waiting for, this whole anticipation of the plant was getting bigger and then it was going to bloom. When it blooms, it's the face of the people that have died that are in the bloom. So that's how it like everybody was like, "Oh, you've been killing all these people," and then he like it gets eaten by the plant, and then his face at the end of the movie.
I feel like I've seen that image before, like advertising the musical, even though it doesn't happen in the musical. But when you said that, I can like picture the faces.
And then like it's like showing the cast.
Yeah.
Well, so that does happen in the original off-Broadway musical. That their faces when they sing the last song in the show, which is "Don't Feed the Plants," I think is what it's called. The plant opens up and their heads are in like the plants, and they sing the end of the show to you.
I was very
so that's how you get
I guess I was very impacted by the stage production I saw because I only barely remember the ending, but maybe that also happened there.
Well, you know, it was either 2 years ago or last week.
This show really has a long sordid history with the ending of this piece of work. I will say that from like every iteration, there's some change that's happened.
Different.
So that's kind of the original movie. The musical, which opened off Broadway in 1982, it closed in 1987. It was when you say Richard Rogers, no,
Richard Rogers.
Howard. Because I wrote this wrong. Howard
/ Ashman, and not Ashman / Menken.
It was Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, which I think I should take over here because I'm kind of the Disney expert on this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I famously don't like Disney anymore, so you are free to talk about it. Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, which I think this is their first for the pod. They are like very famous for being a duo that did probably your favorite Renaissance Disney films, which do include Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and Aladdin. This is their first. This is technically their second musical together. Their first one was like a drama, and so they wanted to do something lighter for this one, and this is kind of what put them on the map.
The first one was the beauty pageant one, wasn't it?
No.
That was the follow-up to Little Shop.
That was the follow-up to Little Shop that did not do well.
My reference of Howard Ashman is Howard, the documentary on Disney Plus that chronicled his life. It's very good. It's a very good watch.
It's a very good documentary.
So I highly recommend it.
In the musical, there are some things that changed from the original film. So Audrey and Seymour die in the musical. It's not really set in a specific time. Whereas like the movie we ended up watching this past weekend is like very set in like 1960 something. This movie or the musical on stage is like not necessarily specifically tied to a point in time, even though the music certainly is. The music is very of a moment. It was revived on Broadway in 2003, even though it shouldn't have technically been called a revival because it was never on Broadway, so you can't revive something that had never truly been there. But
it was his Broadway run.
The OBC was 2003. It was nominated for like the Tony for Best Revival. I think it won. I don't remember. Hunter Foster was nominated for Best Actor. Anyway, it's super famous and everybody loves it. And that's pretty much all I have.
Adam was fully like getting ready for this. Like, I think most of our conversation will be about the ending. Because as it stands right now, as we begin recording, Adam is still on the fence whether or not he likes this movie or not. He still has not made an official decision.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very conflicted.
And I think he needs this to really sparse it out.
I do think it's a problem because we have not talked about it. Because usually I like discuss things with RJ, and I was like, oh, I should save this for the pod, so I've not talked about it really.
You don't know how to feel unless your husband tells you what to think.
As is my place.
I just love that we're doing all these jokes now because I was going through the notes and Molly put in a lot of stuff about like Audrey's place in the whole show that I feel like I didn't even think about because I was just in the mind of like, can't be fun. Like, so I'm excited to see the discourse down there.
This movie, 1986, directed by Frank Oz, screenplay by Howard Ashman, produced by David Geffen. It stars Rick Moranis as Seymour, Ellen Greene as Audrey, Vincent Gardenia, which is a flower. Amazing. We love to see it. Vincent Gardenia is Mr. Mushnick. Steve Martin is the Oren, the dentist. Levi Stubbs.
Levi Stubbs was the voice of Audrey too.
Oh, Levi Stubbs was the voice of Audrey too. James Belushi was the guy the salesman at the end of the film. John Candy is the radio host. Christopher Guest is the first customer,
the first guy
ever.
What a peculiar looking plant.
First of all, Christopher Guest is incredible in this movie.
Incredible.
That would be my entire reel if I was Christopher Guest.
Yeah, I'd say it's a top 3 performance in this movie.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's so good.
It goes Ellen Greene, probably Steve Martin, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then Christopher
Guest.
And then Bill Murray is John Denton or something like that, who's like the masochistic dental patient. The cinematography is by Robert Painter, edited by John Jimpson, which is an incredible ass name. Music, and by that I mean score, was by Miles Goodman and Alan Menken. The production company was the Geffen Company, but it was distributed by Warner Brothers.
Thank you, HBO Max.
Yeah.
It was released like Christmas time, 86. Its running time is 94 minutes. Its budget was $25 million. It was the most expensive movie that Warner Brothers had ever distributed,
Wow.
which is like crazy. And its box office was $39 million. So
not a flop, a hit.
A hit? Someone hit.
I don't know if I'd say it was a hit, but it made it back.
They made their money back.
Successful. Yeah.
It was a success. Yeah.
94 minutes. Think.
Oh
Lord.
My God!
Honestly, isn't that the best part of this musical?
Moving.
Keeps it moving. It was truly one of the best things about this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was 90 minutes. Oh, so good.
We love doing this. We love talking about who could have played roles. The filmmakers originally offered the role of Audrey to Cyndi Lauper. Also Madonna and Barbara Streisand were reportedly considered for
Barbara Streisand is Audrey.
But also this is like Barbara Streisand in 86, so she was like 40. I guess Ellen Green was like older.
Yeah,
she wasn't that old though.
But she definitely like played and portrayed old.
Yeah, well, she had like done the original run, so this is like anyway.
Barbara Streisand had done Ellen Green did the original.
Ellen Green had done the original run. I apologize. Eddie Murphy was considered to voice Audrey too, which I think could have been fine.
Yeah.
I don't think you get a lot of. I think it works better having it be Levi Stubbs because it's so much singing.
Yeah. I have a whole section on race and Audrey too that I'm waiting to get into.
Oh, it's so interesting. Awards. Golden Globe, it was nominated for Best Picture Musical Comedy, and it was nominated for Best Score. At the Academy Awards, it was nominated for Best Original Song for Mean Green Mother from Outer Space, and it was nominated for Best Visual Effects, but it did not win anything.
A genuinely good original song. Thank you.
And according to Wikipedia, it was the first nominated song that had profanity in it. Because he uses the S word.
And the first song sung by a villain.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
This movie is so fascinating the more you like dive into all the backgrounds of it. It took 7 months to film this film.
Wow.
7
what a contrast
months
from the original.
7 months is incredible when you think about film because like most movies are like a month, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So like 7 months is wild. And yes, it's a big budget musical, but like that is so much time.
It is crazy, like big budget, but like there were many moments in the movie that I was like, you could tell that it didn't feel like it was a use of a lot of resources. Like the fact that Skid Row was like the same like 4-corner block, like was shot in every single angle possible.
Shot on the 007 soundstage in London. So it's like largest soundstage at the time it was the largest soundstage in the world.
And I suspect that was not a budgetary constraint, but a choice because something I wrote down was this is a musical put to film, not a film version of a musical. Like it feels very much like they are leaning into what is effective about stage musicals and the choices that they're making. And that contained set to me is kind of part of that.
Yeah. Ooh, speak on that. I'm excited to get on that.
Should we just go into it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my next thing is about the opening in that point, which is everyone absolutely just screams singing at each other in Skid Row. An amazing
it is
opener.
So good. Famously, my favorite songs in the musicals are either world building songs. I love a good world building song. I love Herbert Hoover and Annie. I love We Know You Like It Here and Annie. I love Annie,
NYC and
Annie. I just love a good song where like the ensemble gets like a meaty like we're all here and this is the world. Like I love Good Morning
setting
Baltimore. Like it's just that feeling of that setting the stage, and I just love those opening numbers. And I think this one does a really good job of it. I think the Greek chorus.
Oh my God.
I mean, what the first thing Adam said when the Greek chorus came out, he looked at me and like immediately looked in the audience, and no one questions anything for the rest of the movie.
No.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because Katz's whole thing was they were like, we can't reference the camera in any way. And yet they still did. So that was stupid.
Yeah.
But like this starts off strong by being like, hi.
Hello. Attend the tale.
I was so tempted and aware of not trying to write all my notes, making this just in opposition to Cats, but it was certainly a thing to notice of how much they were like, we are doing a musical, we are going to talk to you, we are gonna, and also like I think in Skid Row, or maybe in Skid Row, they also like all walk in pace with the music, which is another like giveaway of like, we're all in the world of this musical and we're not like making a serious film, Tom Hooper, out of this.
And to compare it back again to Cats, it's the like when Cats wasn't doing well, I felt like the PR was like, well, it's a cult classic. It's going to be a cult classic. And I'm like,
so weird.
That it's just a weird thing. Like looking at this movie, which is a cult classic, it's like there's an earnestness in the decisions that they make that isn't like self-serving. Like I feel like Cats was, that I felt like this led to a better like chance for it to be a cult classic.
Yeah, I would say this film is more aware of the concept of what fun is. And I don't know if Cats is aware of that word at all.
Yeah, Tom Hooper does not know fun.
There you go.
Downtown, where the folks are broke. You go downtown, where your life's a joke. You go downtown, where you buy a toke. Can you go home to Skid Row? Home to Skid Row.
Yes, you go.
Downtown,
where the caps don't stop.
downtown,
Where the food is slap.
downtown, where the hopheads flop in the snow.
Is this a good place to get into camp? Like a deep dive into that concept as we're talking about the tone and cult classics?
Probably, because I think I one time was having a conversation with my mom. Hi, Mom. Where
Thanks
I
for
said
listening,
something.
Nan.
Thank you for listening. Where I was like, "Oh, something was campy," and she like didn't know what that means. And I think just because I live in like the queer community,
Queer and theater,
I'm like kind of aware. But I've technically never read Susan Sontag's like notes on camp. So I don't actually know if I'm fully aware of like what camp is.
Well, let's bring her out now. Susan,
welcome to the pod.
Right.
The biggest get. Is she dead?
I don't know, but possibly. Well, I reread Notes on Camp for this, and I believe this is my third time now reading this essay, and it took me about that long to feel comfortable with it, to be honest.
Okay.
Because one thing that she emphasizes, it's not a particularly complicated like writing structure. It's literally bullet points. That's why it's called Notes on Camp. But she talks about how difficult it is to express what camp is and how it is almost like a betrayal that she is writing this essay because you're like the first rule of camp is we don't talk about camp, essentially.
Yes.
But I will read you this, which is: the essence of camp is love of the unnatural, of artifice and exaggeration. So that's like the big thesis statement. Was what camp is the enjoyment of something that took itself too seriously and failed, but that there is something sort of exaggerated and artificial that is actually very pleasing about that failure. So what I would say is that this is camping the 1960s horror film. So the 1960s horror like genre, I would say overall, probably more so than just the film itself, right? Is like trying so hard to take itself seriously, trying so hard to be scary, but like kind of failing. And I think for a lot of people, bad horror movies is probably the best reference that they're going to have for the experience of watching unintentional camp, is that like going so hard for something and having it be way too over the top. Now Sontag says, and this was written in 1964, that deliberate camp, which is what I would argue Little Shop is less satisfying than naive or unintentional camp. But here's my question for you is, has deliberate camp gotten better since 1964? Because two things that I always think of when I think of camp are this movie and then the movie Clue,
Yes.
which are both
I was
deliberate
just
camp,
talking
right?
about Clue and Little Shop like in parallel. Like we were
Right.
talking
Clue
about
is one of my favorite comedies
Yeah.
of all time.
We were talking about Clue I was in the sense of like rewatchability. Like I can always turn on Clue and like it can be background noise or it can be like me sitting down watching it and I would be satisfied both
Right.
ways. And I feel like Little Shop is there for me.
And I think Clue also came out in the 80s, I want to say, right? It's about that same period. So I just wonder if something happened between 64 and around the 80s where enough people kind of like got wise to camp and were able to appreciate it in a nuanced enough way that they could make really satisfying, deliberate camp.
When was like the John Waters like influence on film, like Divine, like Hairspray and because I think
Hairspray, the original, comes out in the 80s.
Okay.
So I want to say probably late 70s, early 80s was when John Waters started.
So then I also don't know if something in like the 70s, like the studios like 76 like type of
I also want to say something very
helped.
funny about camp and Hairspray and
Little Shop.
Okay, well, you
Little
better
Shop.
deliver then.
It better be funny.
Is
You
that-
better.
you know what's funny? John Waters is like from Baltimore. Like that's almost all of his movies are set in Baltimore. And Howard Ashman was also was from Baltimore. And he saw this movie when he was like he saw the original Little Shop of
Little
Horrors
Shop.
when he was like living in Baltimore as a kid.
That's
So I think
actually
that's
bullet point 15 is only people from Baltimore are able to do camp.
Oh yeah, Susan Sontag is.
She really went.
By the way, she did die in 2004. So
Okay, well, rest in peace, Susie. We love you.
Pour one out for
thank
Susie.
you so much. Yes.
Pouring out for
absolutely.
Susie, everyone listening. She's great. She's a great gal. But also, Adam, to your comment about also being in the gay community. So Sontag also talks about how gay men, I think she says or I think she just says gay people. She doesn't say gay men, but to my feeling, it's more so gay men are like, she says something like they're the most articulate vanguard of camp or something to that degree. So it's not that it's exclusively something in the homosexual community, but that it is certainly most cultivated in that community. And so another thing I wanted to say was I find musicals inherently campy because it is generally a bunch of gay people singing about how wonderful heterosexuality is. So I feel like there is like
very earnestly.
very earnestly singing about that. And so I feel like that layer where like all musicals are already sort of camp makes it even better to camp something through the medium of a musical. It like heightens that pleasure even more to me.
Yeah. And I mean, even thinking about like all of our showgays that we've done, OBC, the original run of the show, I felt like the movies that we really resonated with were the ones that were accepting the campiness and the like realities of it being like we're in a musical. Like those were the ones that by acknowledging it right away in the movie or in a smart way that like we know this is a musical, not like Cats, not like James Corden being like you can't rhyme Thames with whatever. It was the ones that I felt like I was either more comfortable with or like more like I accepted those movie musicals more because it is that. And I do believe that we as gays have that special gift and we must cherish it and nurture and protect camp and gatekeep camp from the straights, from Tom Hooper.
I think that was like kind of why what I was saying, and we're going to get back to this at later points throughout the next like few months as we watch more movies, but like I think there was one thing about Cats that did resonate is that like it thought it was like doing something and then what it ended up doing was not what it intended at all. And I think that's kind of like if you are to find any fun in Cats, it is like the unintended monstrosity that it is where some things when they become so like movie by committee where it's like, well, we focus group this to the nth degree So we know that at minute 57, we need this person to do a thing. And then we need a rousing anthem for them to be played on pop charts and to be nominated for an Oscar and da-da-da. So like those get really boring. I'm specifically speaking about one film that I will get into.
Okay.
Let me get
No, I mean, I agree that it can't. Cats is not absent of camp. There's definitely naive camp to it. So here's what I've been thinking about recently. I think if I were to watch Midnight Screaming, a Midnight Screaming,
Halloween.
I think I just want it at 1.25 speed. And then I would love it
That would be
as
fun.
naive camp. Just the pacing just needs to be a little bit up there. And then I
Yeah.
think, that sort of like commitment to the exaggerated and like spectacular failure element, absolutely there for Cats.
And there is I think too something that like culty is often like synonymous with something that's campy, but there's not necessarily always the same. But I do think there's something always like inherent in when a movie becomes a cult classic, that it's also like there's people, it's like the hipster thing, like welcome back to 2012, but like the hipster thing of being like, I know this exists and nobody else does, so like just by virtue of me knowing it exists, I think it's better than like if more people knew about it, then it would like lessen its appeal. The shine of the diamond would like lessen.
I think hipsterism is interesting because it's almost the foil to camp, where it is also the appreciation of something that is like underground and whatever, but it like takes none of the joy that camp does from it, right? And so hipsters, we're really glad you've been uninvited from the culture and are now irrelevant.
Bye.
Okay, so I want to talk about, that was a lot. That's a lot
about camp.
I do want to talk about the Greek chorus specifically. The characters' names are Ronette, Chiffon, and Crystal, referencing three Motown girl groups of the 1960s: the Ronettes, the Crystals, and the Chiffons. And I think they are so good as like plot devices.
Yes.
So Frank Oz like came to Howard Ashman and David Geffen and was like, I see this as being like, they keep appearing, like they play this role also in the show, but he like bumped it up for the film basically. He wanted there to be like, every time they showed up on screen, he wanted there to be a literal spotlight on them.
Very Chicago, very
Chicago.
very Tay Diggs.
They just couldn't do it at the time because
they needed another $1 million to pull off that effect.
there was like a lot of light bleed, so it like didn't work for that reason. Because it was again like all on a soundstage. But I think the use of them as like a narrative structure for the audience to like get into it, and they kind of like comment on it, but are also a part of the world, but then like step out of the world to like it's
so smart.
It's so smart and it's so simple. And I think the simplicity is what makes it so good.
Yeah, I think that they're maybe the best like individual choice in adapting this into a musical is having that Greek chorus who addresses us and there's like so musically exciting every time that they're on screen or on stage. Like you're happy that they show up every time. I also love in the movie, and I don't remember from seeing the stage show how much this is true, but how they have like in-world roles and then out-of-world roles as well, that they're the chorus, but then they're also like these girls who just hang out in the neighborhood and interact with the characters as well. I think that's a really cool touch.
I love that in the movie, so they're played by Tashina Arnold and Tisha Campbell, and they're still like best friends to this day. Tashina was Everybody Hates Chris.
The mom and Everybody
Hates Chris. Tisha Campbell was the mom in My Wife and Kids. And so like me as like
and
a
they
middle
look the same.
They look exactly the same.
It's crazy.
So me as a middle schooler, like like all the memories of me just watching those shows over and over again because they were in syndication, and like watching this movie, it just gave me a full like broad like, oh, like they're just, all the work that they've done is just really good. And I think that like, because they are so impressive in like the music, like they sound amazing. And I think that obviously that the whole thing about like the doo-woppy, you know, the girl groups back in the day, it's such tight harmonies that like that's that's the appeal, right? That they sound so good together.
Yeah.
And so I think just by adding that and giving them the role of the Greek chorus, just like you wanted to see them, like you wanted to see what they were gonna do next.
Yeah.
Adam did make a comment that like the dresses got better as the time went on.
The first dresses are very bad. The blue and black polka dots.
I thought they were all good.
It's like a bubble dress, but then like an under, and I think that's like
I
still
think it's
correct
cute.
for the time.
Yes,
but I think
it is.
Looks
Yeah, yeah.
bad. So
Yeah. I will say I totally agree. I love them. The one thing that I wasn't sold on, and this is not the performer's fault, was that like calypso number just in the middle of the musical that I was like a little like it wasn't really moving the plot forward.
Was it the one explaining the plant or no? Oh, the like actual, it felt like an act break. Like I was like, oh, and now it's act 2.
Yeah.
Which wasn't really needed in a 90-minute musical. And it felt like it was a bit of a deviation from like the musical identity of the rest of the
That's true.
the rest
That's
of
true.
the piece. It felt like maybe this was written in a time where it was like everyone has to have a calypso number somewhere in their musical. And they were like, I guess this is where it goes. I wasn't really sure what was happening. With
I
that
don't
one.
know, but I did see that was made for the movie, and I was like,
Seymour pushed a broom, nothing in his news but gloom and doom. Then he lit a fuse and give him room. He started an explosion, holy cow! That thing which played kaboom, and he's having some fun now. Some fun now. Up with what's he having some fun now? Showgays, he's having some fun now. Oh boy, ain't he having some fun now? Now, some fun now. Ain't he having some fun now? Yes, ma'am, he's having some fun.
Because it was meant to be like, that was directly after the store like picks up. Because I think the next scene is like Audrey designing the arranging flowers.
Oh my god, with the glitter. Oh my God.
It's so funny. She's so
Blue.
serious too. It's just like glow.
okay, literally, I have to spend the next 6 hours discussing Ellen Green's performance as Audrey 1 because she is so incredible. There is this, I really think this film is very well cast. I actually have no problems with really anybody in it, shockingly.
Same.
I think everyone does like a really good job in this. And I think it's also because she like originated the role on
it's
or
so
off-Broadway.
lived in. It's so she knows that even though it is crazy, like we've said like her speaking and her singing, but it's so specific and like so it makes sense in the story and it's so grounded that you're like, yeah, this is a real person, even though she's not. She's a caricature.
She's so it is crazy that her major storyline is she is the victim of domestic abuse. Yet you are able to like laugh at her in not like a mean-spirited way, but she is so funny, but also so sweet and naive that all you want is the best for her.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to get around to the conversation of the original ending, but like her getting to like live the like at the end of the film, like her getting the happily ever after, and she gets to go do the life that she sings about in the start of like in her Want song is so sweet, and it's such an incredible line to toe, and it's so hard to do correctly, and she just literally nails every beat of this performance. I wish she had won every award for this. I'm literally not kidding. I'm like tearing up thinking about it because it's so hard.
Yeah. So I mean, I equally love her performance. I think it's great. But if we were going to talk about her portrayal, I think what I was a little perturbed by on this watch. So I love that she is doing like, I wrote, she's like woman in quotation marks, because that's also part of Sontag's essay is like, it's not a lamp, it's a lamp in quotations. So like she's a woman, you know? And like it is a drag performance in many ways, right? She's absolutely doing high drag.
Yeah, I made that note of like, I don't want to take a role away from an actual like woman actress.
The only speaking female in this movie.
Like in the plot device. But I was like, I genuinely see Audrey as a drag queen. Like this is a drag role.
Yeah. So some examples of where I love the woman performance is wearing a little black dress to her menial labor job at a flower shop. Like all of her dresses until she gets to Seymour are like evening cocktail gowns for her day job.
Yes.
She has at one point a sling made out of fishnets.
Yes.
Amazing.
It's incredible. And that's from the original stage version. Like that. It's
like supposed to be like hose. Yeah.
Obviously everything about the voice that she does. And she even does these like little yelps throughout where she's like, oh.
Yeah.
And there's a scene at the end where there's literally a single tear that runs down her face, which is like never not a good idea in a movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I also wonder, you know, I'm going to take camp a little bit seriously for a moment, which Sontag wouldn't like.
Yeah.
Sorry, Suze. But
listeners, this is where you can go to the bathroom if you need to. This won't be interesting at all.
I also find it a little bit perturbing that like the most feminine you can be is also abused is a little bit of what the
there's something that
movie is portraying.
So the original film does not have the domestic abuse storyline at all. That is not a part of it. That was added to make Oren more of like an asshole, basically. Because in the original movie, Seymour goes to the dentist and he realizes that there's like an interaction where like the dentist is a jerk to Seymour because Seymour got his like flower order wrong one time or whatever. And then Seymour like murders him, as opposed to like the stage version in the movie where like the dentist is literally the worst person. I would favor the plant over the dentist.
Yeah.
And the way the dentist dies in the movie is that like he kind of like suffocates to death on the laughing gas that he set up for himself. And it's a very Breaking Bad situation where Seymour just watches him die and doesn't really do anything to stop. It's morally gray for sure.
I just read a book called Detransition Baby, which is about 3 individuals. One of them is detransitioning, and then one is a trans woman, and the one is a cis woman, and they're trying to like have a baby because there's someone got pregnant. So like, but the trans woman, she like says it in like how she's described and like how she plans out her relationships is that she does have a tendency to like not favor but like end up being like that submissive kind of like jerky guys, because that is in a sense how we've been instructed to believe that like that is the purest form of feminism, is something that is so precious, that can be
so fragile
and so
femininity.
Yes.
Well, and
you
it's
said
also
feminism.
Sorry. Sorry.
Feminism is weak. It is not strong.
Yes, femininity. Like that's almost like what's ingrained in that character's like development of like that's what it means to be a woman. If I'm treated
Sorry, I knew that RJ read that because I watched it in the Ampliverse book club. So just to plug your other show.
So plug the Ampliverse book club, honey, on YouTube.
I'm cutting this whole thing. I yes, and also like the fact that she is like her waist is the size of my pinky. Like she is teeny tiny itty bitty, and it all leads back to like she's like minutes away from like collapsing on the floor and breaking into 1,000.
It's the full physicalities too, like of her performing quote unquote woman. Like it's the way she walked, the way she would like carry her weight,
cheetah print shoes.
Yes,
the whole all of it was. So, I just think she's very good. Can we listen to her sing a little bit of Somewhere That's Green real quick?
A matchbox of her own, a fence, a 3-year chain link, a grill out on the patio, disposal in the sink, a washer and a dryer, and an ironing machine, and a tract house that we share, somewhere that's green.
It's so good. Does it sound exactly like the song from The Little Mermaid, Part of Your World? Absolutely. It is beat for beat same song.
Yes, it is the prototype for Part of Your World.
But is everybody's favorite song out of the Disney canon probably Part of Your World? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you know what? If you get it right once, just use it again.
Yeah, there is like, it's just like the want song, the like earnestness of it that Howard Ashman just got. He just understood it. Like him and Alan Menken, they just really got it, and it's.
I do think
so
also
good.
this like this character could not have been written by a straight cis man. I don't think. I just think the way
into it,
the way gay men view women
yes, is woman, is quote unquote woman.
Yeah. And I don't mean that to be like disrespectful or anything, but I think there is like we have such complicated relationships with our mothers that it becomes like this whole thing for the rest of our fucking lives. So anytime any woman, we have to like make her fully like a doll.
Yeah. Yeah, I see
Molly,
that.
I want to dress you up. Molly,
wear this.
I'm trying to think about why I feel, and I don't know if it's just like personal experience and what is upsetting to me as just like an individual. I don't feel bothered by the super thin waistline, by the, I mean, all of that feels like an allowed part of the camp, but like even like the scene where she first has the black eye and there's something like fabulous about her like blue eyeshadow and the black eye kind of cut, like it is also like black eye in quotation marks, right? But that is like it gets to a place where I'm like, that darkness is not quite I can't quite get there with the camp because it feels so integral to her character of understanding she's the most woman because she's the most submissive. She's been, that like there is something that puts the eyeshadow and the black eye together that sort of perturbs me in a way that I can't quite forgive.
And when we were watching the movie, Adam like would react every time like she had to be like the subject of the
when
abuse.
they show the shadow of like Steve Martin slapping her. It's like a visceral reaction, especially now. I think being in 2021, watching it with 2021 eyes, where you're like, but it's no,
and I will say I don't think that the movie is forgiving domestic abuse in any way. They're not portraying it as funny or anything like that. It's just
essentially like building the case against him so that when it does happen.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the worst guy so that you don't feel bad when he's the first to go to the plant. Yeah. But it feels so integral to her character as well that I think is where it's a little uncomfortable to me.
Yeah. I see that. Although I and this is like one of our not big problems, but
also,
I think
sorry.
No, go ahead.
He murders in the original movie. Seymour murders like what they call a streetwalker in the film to feed it to the plant. Like it's not on purpose.
The show or the movie?
In the original movie.
Oh, okay.
He goes to like the railroad tracks and he throws a rock, and then the rock ends up like hitting a streetwalker in the head, and then he like was like, oh well,
there's one.
I guess they're dead, so I guess I can just get rid of them. So I do think that I don't know.
There's something. There's like a layer that obviously when Howard Ashman adapted it, it's like he did like it's like his generation's way of correcting the like really bad views on women, I feel like, that were presented in that movie. So I think it's just like whoever makes the next reboot will fix this.
Also, this is like a minor thing, but Audrey is the only character who has lines. First of all, Audrey is the only person who's a woman who has lines in this film. That's not true. There's the like receptionist at the
Greek chorus.
The Greek chorus. Oh yeah, they do talk. They talk. I think one time. I think they have one scene.
They had like that one. Yeah,
she's only a three-dimensional character, I would say.
Yes,
I mean, if anyone is three-dimensional in this movie, but
none of the women have last names. Every man in this movie has a last name and like a full name, and she's like, she's just Audrey. Audrey, she's just Audrey.
She's just Audrey.
She's just Audrey.
She'll take her husband's last name is what she'll do.
Yeah.
So the thing that kept coming back to us, which I think like is where Adam's like seed of the problem of like, do I like this movie or not, is the performances of Ellen Greene and Rick Moranis.
Oh my!
They are just so good and earnest in the characters that you really can't help but be on their side truly the entire movie. And it almost feels like not a detriment, but there's something about it that like if we get the ending that they don't end up together, it does kind of feel like, oh, I'm thrown off. Like I think you mentioned the focus groups earlier. Like this, like there was a decision made of like, let's give them a happy ending. I think because they were so good and so believable as these characters and how they were portrayed in film that you're like, I just want to see them
I want to
happy.
talk about two things before we get into the ending, because I want to talk about Rick Moranis first, because I think we have to talk about his.
We have to talk about both of the men in Audrey's lives.
Yes.
Yeah. I really don't have to talk about Mushnick. I'm going to be honest. I could totally.
I did tell Adam that I feel like he could easily play any of the male characters in the movie, but I think if he just waits like 20, 30 years, he would play Mushnick for the rest of his life and make millions. Just play
millions from Little Shop of Horrors.
From non-act roles of Mushnick.
The one thing I will say about Mushnick, somewhat talking about race later probably, is that I believe the character is meant to be Jewish. I'm not. I don't know enough about the ethnicity of names to know that's definitely true. I know he was Jewish in the '60s horror film. And so it's a little weird because Victor Gardenia plays him, who is an Italian American.
Yes, plays very Italian.
The other weird layer is that Rick Moranis is Jewish, and so there is representation, but not of the character that you would cast. Anyway, I was thinking about it because I feel like there's been sort of discourse recently about non-Jewish people playing Jewish characters. And so, that's the one thing that I just wanted to 2021 lens point out.
Yeah.
There's a throwaway joke where also Seymour is supposed to be Jewish as well.
Oh, okay.
In the original film, at least. I don't know. I shouldn't speak to this one because I don't know for sure. But in the original, he's also Jewish. And there's a joke where there's someone named
Mrs. Shiva?
Mrs. Shiva, because
Mrs.
sitting Shiva is when you do like a Jewish funeral, basically, and she's like the big funeral client.
Yes, who gets, so I read about that in an article, and she gets mentioned really briefly in the film. She is the person on the phone that Audrey puts the glitter on the flowers for. So they did like a little homage to that running joke in the original. And apparently part of that joke is that you don't bring flowers to a Jewish funeral, and so that's like what's partially hilarious about it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, let's talk about
Hand me the lilies.
We got to talk about the two men then. Let's talk about Seymour and let's talk about Oren, the two men in Audrey's lives.
Where are we starting with?
Seymour is a fascinating character because I cannot think of a musical before this one that has its main male character be so not masculine. Especially post anything I think post like Oklahoma. Every man is like, I'm the man. And it's like the most like that was when like America was really at its most like we're done with World War II. The men are back.
The men are back. We miss the men.
Get out of there, Rosie the Riveter. So it was fully like these are your gender roles. Da, 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 da. So Seymour, especially at least for Showgays, is the earliest musical we have seen that has a male person at the center who is not like strong and like charming and chivalrous and all of this stuff.
It's the
so
dweebiness. Yeah. Which like I have a very strong take that no traditionally hot, attractive man should ever play Seymour. Seymour should be like average Joe at best. Like I don't want to see hot it's giving me very like I don't want to see hot crutchies on Newsies. Like don't give me Andrew Keenan Poulter as a hot crutchy. I don't want to see a hot. And I'm sure Jonathan Groff did a great job.
Get the hot men off the screen. I
want to see a hot crutchy. Let's see some people with disabilities that are sexy. Absolutely.
That's good. That's true.
So yes, and maybe yes, but this is also a literal nice guy narrative. Like the most nice guy narrative that could ever. I think they like literally talk about like I don't deserve a nice guy though, Seymour. It's like that language exactly.
Yeah.
So I also felt like it very much reflected that 80s, like that like. Oh, the nerd gets the girl, I feel like was a very 80s thing, right?
And so weird science, like that.
I think you're right that was revolutionary at the time, that the idea of like, it used to be that the big jock got the girl, and now like, what if the nerdy guy got the girl? So like, I think, to Adam, what you were saying earlier about like, at the time it was revolutionary, but like 2021 eyes, it was a little
Or at least like it's making those tropes that we're seeing in like 80s movies or whatever is finally coming through in musicals. Like
I would still say in most musicals, still you do
Like-
not see a man who is like this who ends up
the romantic lead
is
and
the
hero.
romantic
Yeah,
lead
yeah, yeah.
technically. But I also just think Rick Moranis. You just said you were just talking about how Seymour shouldn't be hot. I agree that Seymour should not be hot.
Rick Moranis is hot though.
Rick Moranis is so cute in this movie.
Yeah,
All I wanted
very
to do is
attractive.
kiss his stupid fat
His
lips the whole time. He's
stupid
so cute.
fat lips, like fully just like
pouting the whole movie. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my god,
he's
you're
a
so
cute.
cute.
He's so cute.
So cute. This is
Adam's
post
soft
Ghostbusters.
boy thirst comes out yet again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love
Adam's
soft
yeah.
Mistopheles, Seymour, give it to me, baby.
Politely, give it to me politely and ask for more.
I've given you sunshine, I've given you dirt, you've given me nothing but heartache and hurt. I'm begging you sweetly, I'm down on my knees. Oh please, grow for me. I've given you plant food and water to sip. I've given you potash, you've given me zip. Oh God, how I missed you. Oh Pod, how you teased.
But I do think
Now please.
Rick Moranis is also just really likable in this role.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there is, I don't think it's Rick Moranis is the problem. I really think he's so good in this role. I'm
Mhm.
really not trying to say anything. And I don't know if it's maybe the direction or maybe they could have added more dark humor into the thing. But I think the reason once they had these test screenings of the original cut of the film for like 2 audiences in California, and the audiences had they walked out and when they polled them, only 13% of the audience members said that they would recommend this movie to someone else because of the ending, basically. They like watched them through the whole thing and they were all on board until the minute Audrey died. And then they were like, we are not in it at all.
Mm.
And that freaked the fuck out of Warner Brothers, basically. And so they would not have released the film if they hadn't made a new version, is basically what ended up happening. So that's why you get the ending you get today, where unfortunately, due to it being a Faustian tale, he does not get the Faustian comeuppance in this version, in the theatrical released version. So I think there's a problem that I'm having when I say that I don't like this film. I think there is a thing about it where like I still have residual effects of seeing it as a child and being scared of the plant. I think that's definitely some trauma there. But also I think it's like a little muddled in its storytelling, and I think if it had just chosen one way or the other, right now it's trying to live in both worlds, and I don't think it really works. If you set up more that Seymour is more complicit in what's going on, then I think it is darker. I think it works out that
Yeah.
he's getting what he should get, but by being like, he just happened to die
Feed
from like the laughing gas, and then
yeah.
Mr. Mushnick just happened to fall
Fall.
into the plant and then it's like, well, I guess he's not really
The payoff.
so
isn't.
if he was to die, then it's like, well, he shouldn't have died. I mean, good lord, yeah. So I think it's
Yeah. It is very sort of Disney foreshadowing Menken and Ashman's future of like
Mhm.
people can die, but they have to like die from circumstance. No one can
Yes.
be the one that killed them.
Yeah.
So
Unless
that brings
it's the
up.
villain. Yeah.
Well, so this is a question though. Who is the villain of this movie?
the man. Rich people who only isn't it American consumerism? Isn't that technically who the
yes?
issue
Which
is?
I think also I feel like we're just scattering the ending conversation. So
I know.
Adam before this started,
that's the only conversation I want to have. Basically.
Yeah. Adam before this started sent me the alternate cut of what it was when Audrey and Seymour did die, and there's a scene in that where it's like people crowded into a department store buying Audrey 2s, right? And I think that makes the whole consumerism idea. I mean, not that it's unclear in this, but I think maybe
It's
less
nailing-
clear because
It's like fully pointing the finger, like there it is. This is it.
right, because in the theatrical cut of the film, it's sort of like he says no, but it's kind of going to happen anyway. And then we get the little Audrey in their lawn at the end, but like that's not
more
because
like
they
a
bought it.
tongue-in-cheek.
It's just because it's like a plant that can flower, you know,
Yes.
like spread its seed. I don't know if there's a less gross way to say that.
Pollinate.
There's less of that clear, whereas in the musical, it ends with the don't feed the plants, and that's very clearly like, hello, you, the audience, you feed into this thing. I also read an interesting article from, I'm going to guess it's Mandraka, who wrote about this sort of the 80s Reaganism context of the musical and put forward that Seymour is the villain and that the point is like, hey, we're in this place with sort of like racialized others all around us, but like the real villain is the white guy who's putting everything he can into advancing materially instead of what you expect to be the other as the villain. I didn't agree with everything in any actually of the essays that I read for this one, but I think it's also interesting that you said that Seymour's meant to be Jewish. I think that sort of complicates that narrative as well, of that like the sort of like what am I trying to say? When I think of like
Molly, go ahead with your
if the argument is like it is the normative man who is the villain, I think that's more complicated the more marginalized identities that Seymour has potentially. Sure. And I think we've just talked about how he is also a man who is not traditionally masculine. So it is I don't know that he fits exactly that sort of like Reagan's ideal of what a man is type of concept.
Yeah. I think for me the reason it doesn't work is that it doesn't it needs to play more into the Faustian tale, and he needs to be more complicit
deliberate
in
that like,
what
yes,
is happening.
I want to decide to do this so that I can get the girl, get the money.
It needs to be more clear that he thinks the stakes are Audrey will love me because of the plant.
Yeah.
And I don't think
that's not how it is right now. It's very much just like Audrey
it's clear that Audrey likes Seymour beforehand and that he doesn't know that.
Yes.
But there is no point,
because he's a nice guy, the nice guy narrative.
But there's no point in it that you realize that he thinks it's only because of the plant, which I think that needs to happen.
And that's what they were trying to say, but I think they didn't actually do that work to make it like fully believable. Because you were like, well, I already know they kind of already like each other beforehand.
So there was an entire dream ballet that got cut before the test screenings that they had shot too.
Oh.
Which is, there's a song from the original musical called "The Meek Shall Inherit the Earth," and it was basically like laid out that Seymour dreamt that it was like because of the plant he will like get the girl, get the job, get the life, get everything he wants. So I think even if they had maybe kept that, I think it could have been more clear. But Frank Oz was just like, oh, it just doesn't work in the cut. It was like too long.
Frank Oz was like, I am knee deep in this puppet right now, so I just need more time.
Literally,
I am literally in this puppet.
The puppets are so good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Rick Moranis did a great job, and to somewhat transition us to the other man in Audrey's life. What a wonderful show up of comedians in this. Like almost the whole cast are comedians, not musical theater people, and it's so surprising. And I wonder, earlier one of you said something about like keeping musicals away from the straights, and it seems like comedians are the one exception that they can understand camp and deliver on it.
Yeah,
and
Steve
I would
Martin
like
can
to say,
stay.
I would like to say that Rick Moranis and Steve Martin are giving a vocal performance that Judi Dench could never.
The smear campaign continues.
Steve Martin is so funny in this. And it's so crazy now seeing it from 2021 because so many of like I think the legacy roles that Steve Martin has had is where he's the straight man. And so to see him do like this is Goofaloof. Like this is like bonkers crazy. This is Scooby-Doo. And he's so good at it and it's so nuanced. Apparently he came up with the bit where he punches the nurse in the face and he like
Professor Sprout.
Yeah. and he rips the head off the doll in the waiting room. Like all of those he came up with himself. He did the whole, he like leaned into the Elvis like moves. He's just so committed. It's so good.
The 50s greaser like Elvis thing is so funny,
But
because
as a dentist.
But as a dentist, like that's why the turn when he says dentist in the song is so funny, because it's like you are a clear comic book character of like Kaneki. And then all of a sudden you are like, oh, and then you become like a maniacal dentist. It's the camp.
Yeah, he's delivering so well. And the song I Am the Dentist is, I think, one of the best villain songs ever written. And to yet again bring it up to Cats, Sideways, in his video about the musical of Cats, he talks about how most of the songs in Cats are I Am songs, which is usually what the villain does. And he uses I Am the Dentist as like the example to get the audience caught up with that idea, because it's such a clear, he literally says, I am the dentist. So like you can really tell that that's what it's about. And the way that they do the twist where you think he's going to say something else, because they've been setting up like he's a professional, like what is that? And they reveal it the way you reveal a villain, Tom Hooper.
He's not on the alleys going, I am a dentist.
Yeah, just in the first 6 minutes, he just walks past the chorus and says, I'm a dentist, by the
way. I really have nothing to say. Can we just listen to the dentist real quick? It's so good.
It's so good.
When I was younger, just a tad little kid, my mama noticed funny things I did, like shooting puppies with a BB gun. I'd poison guppies when I was done. I'd find a pussycat, bash its head. That's when my mama said,
What did she say?
She said, my boy, I think someday you'll find a way to make your natural tendencies pay. You'll be a dentist. You have a talent for causing things pain. So be a dentist. People will pay you to be inhumane. Your temperament's wrong.
Watching it 2021 Eyes, we are deep in Only Murders in the Building right now, where he plays an amazing job. Like, I would say the straight character.
He is the straight. It's hit. Well, okay. If you're acting against Martin Short, you have to be the straight man.
You're not
sorry. And then like, I guess really Selena Gomez might be the straight man.
Yeah,
they're kind of both playing it because she's doing like she's doing an exaggerated millennial Gen Z type. Yeah.
But it's just great to kind of see, like, literally this week being like him playing Brazos in Only Murders, and then like watching him here, just like, oh, it's just in his prime. Steve Martin in his prime.
Steve Martin also, there is something about this movie where like so many people are so good in these roles that it felt like watching a masterclass of comedy of like, don't be afraid of the joke, lean into it, like just go for it and it will work, because everybody is so committed to what they are doing. It's incredible.
Every role in Little Shop of Horrors is a character actor's dream. Like truly, like
Bill Murray coming in and doing his Bill Murray thing.
Oh my God, I love it.
As the masochistic patient is so funny. I will say it's queer coded. There was something that was very like, there's something like,
isn't it funny how this man loves being tortured by men?
He loves pain, if you know what I mean.
I guess so. I thought it was interesting depiction of kink, because Steve Murray is very clearly into it, and it ruins it for the dentist. So like the dentist is a genuinely bad guy, because he can't enjoy it if someone's not in legitimate pain. He can't be in the scene with
raping
Steve Murray.
them, basically.
With Bill Murray. But hot take, Bill Murray and Steve Martin are good comedians.
Who knew?
I thought that was such a great scene. I really enjoyed it. I guess I don't have as much of a phobia of the dentist, so maybe Adam, you didn't like it as much.
I didn't like when the stuff was in his mouth and he was like, I cringed so hard when he was like pulling his lips apart. I was like, because that
Get out of my
taste of the
mouth.
metal, I hate it.
Or the latex glove.
Bill Murray does this brilliant thing where he's got all these like cotton
It's
like
the
rods
cotton,
in
like,
his
them
and
out.
he
pill-shaped.
slowly spits them out. It's so funny.
It's so good.
Also, apparently, that scene was like not scripted. The only part of the script was that like Bill Murray was just supposed to like yell the whole time, and then he like came up with all these lines like on the spot. And apparently, like it took them like 3 days to shoot that sequence of like them in the dental room together, and the editor had like the hardest time trying to cut the scene
into
together
a
because none of the
cohesive-
jokes made sense because they didn't like follow each other correctly.
I love the concept that in the script it's just like man goes to the dentist. It's like the line of instruction that they got.
Yeah,
That's
so
it. I
funny.
do love the through line of what ended up happening on the film of like the crap dentists that I've been to because they don't even know like a root canal from a whatever.
Didn't
like,
he say
it's
he was
just-
at like a dentist like 3 days before or something like that? It's so funny.
He wants a dominatrix, not a dentist, is what he wants.
Correct.
Yes.
Or is it a different term if it's a male
Dominatro.
Dominatro.
Il
but yeah,
Divo. I would like to shout out the girl with the braces that comes out as Bill Murray goes in. That is Jim Henson's daughter. So shout out to her. It's a fun little cameo.
I will just shout out all, I mean, yeah, we already talked about it, but just like shouting out all the good cameos. Christopher Guest we already talked about.
Oh my God.
John Candy. Which, LOL, the concept of it's a radio show about weird objects. Like the worst medium possible.
It's so funny. WSKID. Also,
and Jim Belushi. Just like
Jim Belushi.
Yeah, who's credited as James Belushi.
I know.
And I was like, who?
It's his brother. Who's James?
The third brother. John, Jim, and James.
His name is my name too.
Jesus.
Also, if we're just shouting out micro moments, which that terminology I'm taking from the podcast All Right Mary, which is the best Drag Race podcast. They like to talk about micro moments. There's a moment where Audrey's getting picked up by the dentist, and then as he's leaving, she pushes his motorcycle back so he can get out of the alley.
Yes.
And him sitting on it while this like tiny woman is pushing his motorcycle for him is maybe the funniest part of the whole.
He's like yelling at her to hurry up because she's running down the street, and it should not be funny because this man is yelling at this poor woman.
Right.
But she's so funny because she does.
I'm coming! Yeah, they play it perfectly. I also think that it's a brilliant choice just to have him be a dentist. I feel like it is the exact right scale of villain for this kind of a show where like people are afraid of the dentist, but he's not like a serial killer, you know? Like it's the perfect thing for this.
I do want to say, going back to Ellen Greene and Rick Moranis, that I just think that they have like really good chemistry together as well. And I think it helped that they did shoot this movie for so long that they really became like a family on set, and then they had to go back and do reshoots for the new ending. But I just think that they work together so well. There's this concept that I read about, and I don't remember who said it, so I apologize for not having my notes in front of me in that regard. But that when you go see a musical or something on stage, you are basically seeing it in a wide shot. Everything is a wide shot. There are no close-ups. So you can grow more attachment to characters in a film because you're seeing like those small little details you can only see in a movie or on TV or whatever. And so I do think that that probably was another reason that audiences got so attached to those two characters that it was like hard to watch them then die.
Yeah.
But Suddenly Seymour is so fucking good.
Well, I want to say about that the quote I skipped over earlier was that Frank Oz, the director, speculated that the reason test audiences hated them dying so much in the film, but they got away with it in the stage show, was that in a stage show, you know that they're coming out again for curtain call. So there's like a level of knowing that they're not really dying that maybe isn't quite as true on film, where it feels more realistic and like as if Ellen Greene and Rick Moranis are dying in some way. And that does seem really upsetting. So I think that's an interesting, film versus stage difference.
I think this too, because it came out in the 80s and not the 90s. The 90s was the time of like every comedy came out with bloopers during the credits. So I wonder if that could have filled the void of the curtain call, where you like see them goofing around on set. So you'd be like, oh, it was so fun
it's
to
so
be
fun.
with them.
Yeah.
They're all in on the joke. Like the whole thing is fun together.
Isn't that terrifying though? Just like the absolute power that this medium can have of like it truly can like convince people that like, oh, this is real.
I mean, it's the same.
Insane.
It's the same thing of like when people are like television stars, or like I should say more back in the day, because I think everything's basically television now. But like people would have like if you met a celebrity and they were a television star, you felt like you were so much more connected to them
To the character.
because they were in your household like once a week. Like you knew them more intimately than a movie star who you had to still pay to go to a movie theater to see. It is like the human brain really doesn't understand the world we're living in currently. It's still trying to catch up.
A movie with this level of camp to then be like, oh, it's too realistic when those two die. It's like,
exactly.
Come on,
Exactly. That's the thing. Like it goes back to like they are just so good and so believable and do such a good job of us making us fall for them that you are in it the whole way.
Because that emotion does feel real, even though the characters seem really heightened. Yeah.
Tell me this feeling will last till forever. Tell me the bad times are clean washed away.
Please understand that it's still strange and frightening for losers like I've been. It's so hard to say. Suddenly see more. Suddenly see more. If you're afraid you. Suddenly see more. Suddenly see. Show me I can.
Can we talk about the plant in the room?
Yes,
There was a plant?
There was a big plant.
There was a
What?
plant.
There was a plant
I
in the
just want to shout out to the fact that there were like 5 different versions of Audrey built because she had to like continue to grow, obviously. So they had to keep like bumping up her size.
Wait, pause. Do we think the plant is a woman?
No.
Adam's just
I
saying
think plants are genderless, actually. It's a hot take.
Okay, just it's an interesting read, but continue.
I think Adam is just
I think I
because
really
Audrey
was just
too.
saying it was Audrey that I was calling. Yeah. The plant, the plant had to grow a bunch, so they had to create different versions. The largest version, which is in the song
Mean Green Mother
from Outer Space. They had to literally, when they filmed it, because the lips move to the words. This is not a like a hand puppet
Right.
situation. Like the lips are moving correctly to what the syllable is.
It's like someone
They had to shoot it at a lower frame rate or at a higher frame rate and then like they basically slowed the track down so they could like do it in time. So most of the shots are like the plant by itself, but anytime you see actors with them, the actors are like pantomiming really slow movements because they had to speed the film up to then match the correct audio.
Tom Hooper, are you listening to this thing about pacing your music and making decisions ahead of time so you can have the song in the right tempo?
Using practical effects. I also want to say that the largest one also took reports of 40 to 60 people running the puppet at a time, which is
that
I can't
the Mean
even fathom that. That is insane to me.
Is it the Mean Green song where then he's got his own chorus of little
he
buzz?
has like the plant itself is like obviously massive, but then there's also like tiny little plants all around it.
It's truly like
and like all the vines are all their own like.
It's every movement class doing flockings like Wet Dream.
God, it's so
like we're like, oh, we're flocking. We're following the energy of the main plant. We're moving as one. It's wild. I can't even imagine.
Flocking is such the most insider theater thing I think you've ever
5
said.
people got that. Welcome. Congratulations to you. We are not going to explain that.
Shout out to movement class. Holla.
Audrey, do you have
Audrey, as a woman, do you have any thoughts?
As woman.
As woman.
Molly, do you have any thoughts about Audrey?
Could you imagine if Molly's take was like, yeah, it was a cool puppet. Didn't really get it. Could have just been a
Okay,
Been a
so
cartoon.
here's where I have to talk about racial coding. So there was this excellent article, again, didn't agree with everything in it, but by someone named Jensen, about the fact that firstly, this musical starts off being aggressively colorblind, right? Skid Row is like, we start with black voices, we center on black voices, but we're like, this is a musical about class, not about race, because there's people of all races in Skid Row, right? But Audrey 2 is quite clearly musically and otherwise coded as black.
Yes.
So by that, I mean, and this is taking from this author who is like a music composition person, because I have less of like a knowledge of the racialization of musical history, that like the music Audrey sings is clearly sort of from a black history. Audrey seems to have a black voice. Apparently there was also controversy at the time about the lips on the plant and whether those were meant to like look like black lips. I didn't read that watching it, but it was like apparently enough of the thing that the director had to like respond to criticism from it and gave a very not apology about it. But I took this quote out of that article and I put it in the Google Doc so that you guys can respond to it. Have the text in front of you for discussion. So Levi Stubbs, who's of the Four Tops, which I think is like a musical group, I assume.
Yes, a Motown group.
Great. Who's in a Motown group, was chosen to play Audrey 2. And Frank Oz, the director, said that he chose him because of the clear blackness of Stubbs' voice. Sorry, that's from the author article, not Stubbs, or not from Oz. So this is a quote from Oz.
Oh no, not this quote.
We're doing it. We have to talk about it.
I read ahead.
He was exactly what I was looking for. Someone who had an edge to him, who was real black, real street, who had a touch of malevolence, but could be real silly and funny at the same time. And then later in the interview, the interviewer offers this idea of like, is it because he has to be like streetwise? And Oz says that has to be a black voice. He says, what is a white streetwise voice? I can't imagine it. Actually, if there is such a thing, it's a ripoff of a black one. Here's why I think this quote is so interesting. Is that, so obviously lots of yikes, right? Like lots and lots of yikes to that.
Do we know when this interview happened? Just because it feels like a very 1986 take.
I assume it is
like
somewhat shortly after the musical or the movie came out, right? But I don't know for sure. That's a good question. So if Audrey 2, though, is written as a black character, even though Audrey 2 is an alien and a plant, but if we accept the argument that the music that Audrey 2 sings positions that character as black, is there something accidentally woke about Frank Oz saying, well, if a white person did that voice, it's just a ripoff of a black voice, and that you should cast a black actor to play that role always, if that is what the character is?
Well, here's the thing. If you're directing the show in real life, it feels weird to not cast a black actor as Audrey 2, right? Because it's...
Well, I think there's also the inherent joke in that the plant is named Audrey 2, named after Audrey 1, that Audrey 2 is the foil of Audrey.
Right.
So Audrey 2 is a vicious man-eating plant that sounds the way it sounds. And Audrey 1, as portrayed by Ellen Greene, obviously, is like a waif who's ready to die at any moment and like so
sounds
sweet
how she sounds.
that she can't even like leave her boyfriend who's abusing her.
Yeah.
So I do think there is like that inherent comedic foil to what that is supposed to be.
But that's super problematic, right? Yeah.
That is really wild. To be like, well, we'll cast it because it's not that.
Because Jensen's argument is basically that Audrey 2, is a stand-in for like a corrupting influence of the black community, and that obviously they engage in white flight at the end of the musical, and even in the stage show, Somewhere That's Green is like this dream of getting away from that, right? So that's really problematic of the malevolent force, whoever is the ultimate villain of the piece. Obviously, Audrey 2 is villainous.
Yeah.
And so that's really problematic. And I agree with you, Adam, that there's like this dichotomy of like white, black, male, female, passive and demanding.
Mhm.
And I think that that's problematic when read through a black man, white woman lens.
Mhm.
But I'm also really interested in the use of the word streetwise in this quote,
Yeah.
because in what way is a literal alien streetwise? Could you not be less streetwise than being not from this planet?
Did he just
It's so funny that it's. I mean, it's yes, he cast Levi Stubbs, but also I think in the original cast, it's a black actor as well. Is that
Mhm.
is that true?
Okay.
I don't. Let me look. Let me look it up before I include this in a thing. And then
But
I
I mean, I will
dragged
say
and canceled.
the thing too is like the songs are already in Motown. We are seeing a Motown group. We are the music is already Motown inspired. So there is like a Detroit about it that I think is what he's trying to actually go for and say, but it just ends up being like street, like the euphemism that we all said like back in the day is street.
Right. It feels like he can't be using this as other than coding for it black, because to me streetwise means like you have a real knowledge of the place, you have like an emotional intelligence about like when to demand what you need and when to step back, and like all that Audrey 2 does is just demand things. Like Audrey 2 is just like clear about what it is that he wants, but
Audrey 2 is welfare queen. It's the welfare queen like idea of like taking advantage.
Right.
But that's the thing. It's the like, yep, this is just class. No race involved, but like obviously as we grew more and like understood more of like social status, it's like, no, it can't just be class. Like
the intersectionality.
The intersectionality.
And I think even if Audrey 2 were clearly coded as black but weren't a villain somehow, the fact that it is a story of the inner city and Skid Row and whatever. I don't know. Inner city might even be a term we're not using anymore. But like it's so clearly centered on black voices in the music in so many ways, and yet it is a story about white people, and that I feel like is already sort of problematic, even if we didn't have this additional layer of like Audrey 2 as the corrupting force.
I would like to say that the original Audrey was by the voice actor was Ron Taylor, and he is a black man who also was in the original run of The Wiz. So that's cool.
Oh,
another great musical.
Can't wait to do that one.
Can't wait to do The Wiz. Yeah, I mean,
let's play a little bit of Mean Green Mother from Outer Space.
The Academy Award nominated Mean Green Mother from Outer Space.
You don't know what you're messing with. You got no idea. You don't know what you're looking at when you're looking here. You don't know what you're up against. No way, no how. You don't know what you're messing with. But I'm gonna tell you. Get this straight. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm playing. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back.
It is very interesting, but at the like
It's also hard because it's like really.
I know that's the thing. It's like the story is good, the narrative is good, and it's that idea of like, okay, the references is also kind of like part of what we accept as camp too. So it's like a tool to be camp is to be specific in its references in that way. So it's like, yes, we're doing Motown, we're doing Skid Row.
I do think that later productions of Little Shop have like been more okay with colorblind casting the main principals as well. Like there was the production in, I believe, the Pasadena Playhouse, where MJ Rodriguez from Pose was Audrey, and a guy
George Salazar
was Seymour. So I do, but even then I think
Amber Riley is
Amber
Audrey
Riley
too.
was Audrey too. So I think it's always like there is like, it's now canon that it has to be a black voice, which I think is.
But I also think it's interesting that like by adapting, not even adapting, but like if you're setting it realistically, like what is a Skid Row today, you will see POC like as the heart of that story. So I think it could be an interesting as the like camp evolves of the movie, like, and as the what are the things that we're always kind of like trying to say, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, as like time moves on and this piece of like story keeps going, following.
Yeah. I do feel like even if with an intentionally multiracial cast, though, the story is still a little bit about white flight, even again, like without the ending in the movie, but the Somewhere That's Green song feels like it is still,
it's about
time. The 60s and someone dreaming of getting out into the suburbs,
it's
right?
like the freeway just was invented.
Yeah.
I can live in Jersey now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reading currently a book on like racial zoning in America and like how that happened and what the fuck is going on, and it is very fascinating. And the white flight was very real for sure. And it was only because white people were basically given opportunities to have the flight to. It's not like black people didn't want to leave. I'm sure they also were very like, this area is not great, but unfortunately they were not given the opportunities to do so. So
there's a great, not great, but there's a fascinating map of the Twin Cities and the regions and the zones that they drew up in sort of racial redlining and who was allowed in what area. And you can literally see where my family became white because because when my great grandfather first moved to the Twin Cities, he was in the like Jewish and Italian section. And then the section that I grew up in is in the like whites section, right? So you can like see that throughout history. What?
Or Minneapolis. Is this
it's
St.
like
Paul?
I think it was both cities. It's in the Twin City because they're right next to each other. I don't remember if the map was specific to one or the other, but I grew up in St. Paul. But it's like fascinating as a person who is absolutely white, but like historically not all of my ancestors would have been considered white, that you can like actually see through a physical change in location when we were considered white.
Ooh.
Yeah. Race is so
gotta get out of Skid Row.
But I also think that like, just to go back to Somewhere That's Green, since we were talking about it, I think that like it's the thing of like, it's the My Own Little Corner. It's like, it's all of
it's
the
like,
ingenue. It's the ingenue wanting out of her station. And it's, everyone has that. That's what's so universal about that style of song. The want song or the wishing song is like, literally everyone feels this way about something. It may not be exactly what the character is like. Obviously, I don't want to go live in a suburb and like do whatever Audrey does.
But, you don't, Adam? You don't want to live in a suburb?
Well,
Adam?
Well,
with a lawn that's so neat that there's not even a path to the door.
Yes,
I know.
Yeah.
I have to walk through the lawn.
But I think that's why that character especially is so resonant, and you gel with her so quickly.
Yeah,
right.
I just have to talk about.
I don't know if you knew, but I really like Ellen Green's performance.
We have to talk about Somewhere That's Green super quick. I just love the absolute, like, this is a shoebox where we are building the perfect house. You can clearly see when she's in the window that is a blue flat.
Oh, it's shot so well.
That it's like, that is clearly a flat, but you're like, that's the point. It's like, I'm in the like Good Housekeeping or Better Homes and Garden. The fact that they threw in a Tupperware MLM in there is just like icing on the cake.
She wears different like, dresses in the course of like a 3-minute song. It's so good.
And the kids look exactly like them as like little.
I love how the MLM has long been a part of the white woman's experience.
Absolutely.
Wait, Molly, you have to watch Lula Rich, which is the Amazon doc. I only say this because they talk about like why MLMs prey on like educated white women as hard as they do. It's very fascinating. Actually.
I watched a Vice documentary about Lululemon. That's right? LuLaRoe, like a year ago, and I just feel like it's gonna be kind of the same material, but I'll get to it, I promise. No, I love Somewhere That's Green. The smile. There's a scene where Rick Moranis checks on the kids, and then he comes back and he's like, and I wish this was a visual podcast because I don't know how to describe it, but like,
it's so
Rick Moranis. It's the goofy like
he's giving a yuck. Like a yuck.
It's probably my favorite moment from Rick Moranis in this movie. And then they immediately open the door to their bedroom with the two separate beds as well.
They stay up watching Lucy in their big, enormous 12-inch screen.
It's so good. It's such a good song.
Ah.
Is there anything else that we feel like we have not discussed in regards to this piece of cinema?
Okay, let me look through.
I think I just want to say one more time that Audrey does spray flowers with glue to put glitter on them for a funeral. Because I think we've mentioned it twice and it needs a third.
Yes.
Rule of threes.
Oh my God. It's just so funny.
I think I just wanted to, just watching this from a standpoint of like, even if you were like, oh, I think the movie's so-so or whatever, I just think like, just for the fact that we don't get practical effects like this anymore, it's so enjoyable to watch in that way, because like we all watched the cut of the original ending, which is on YouTube. It'll be linked in the show notes. It's so good, and it's even better when you know that those are miniatures, and then they're just like they're puppets like going through the miniature sets, destroying it. It's that whole sequence. I know like audiences didn't love it or whatever, but the entire original ending, if you are able to watch it, I totally recommend you do it, because the 5 minutes of everything being destroyed by the plants is so, both like it treads the line of being like, this is like really scary. It's like the disaster movies of like the early to mid 2000s.
It's the Godzillas.
Or like even like Day After Tomorrow or 2012 or all of these where you're like, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, you would have to start crying because it's so sad that many people are dying. But if you just remove yourself from it a little bit and be like, these are massive plants that are like the plant that like puts her mouth, that one's a woman for sure. I don't know why, but that one's a woman. That one gives me female energy.
Because she's mouthy, that's why.
Yeah, she's got a lip.
She's got a mouth on her.
She like covers her mouth, covers the smokestack of the factory with her mouth and blows into it, and then the factory explodes. Like it's so stupid. The gags are so visually funny,
and at the end they come out of the screen.
Well, there's that, and then there's the bit where they like climb the Statue of Liberty, but they also like are there's one where they've like destroyed the like subway train, and they like their mouth is like at the end of the track,
so the train
drives straight. It's so darkly funny, which is weird, because when I think about how this movie doesn't like lean into the dark humor, and I think that also may be why like audiences found it like a little jarring once that started happening. Because like Gremlins is like a year before this, so like it wasn't like audiences didn't understand
or like
how dark comedy works, because Gremlins is a massive hit from the 80s.
I noticed a couple of horror homages that I really enjoyed. So one was the opening with the scroll, which I think is sort of an homage to those 50s, 60s horror flicks, right? And then I loved when Seymour is cutting up the body of the dentist, and it's like you get the silhouette
shadow
of him in the lightning.
Yeah.
So I do feel like they did some really great like nods to that idea, but maybe not as consistent and not as long as that ending sequence would have been.
Well, apparently when he feeds the I think this is what I read, when he feeds the body parts to Audrey and he's like repulsed by it, that scene is reshot, because the original sequence they shot of him feeding the body parts, he was like much more like malicious about it and kind of like enjoyed feeding the plant. So I think there were like some like minor things that made it darker that they like removed just for the sake of like having it gel all together.
And would have been the Faustian bargain more.
I am curious though. Let me look. Like, was this Frank Oz's like first feature? Was that like added pressure?
This is his third feature. This is his first without part of the Hensons though.
Because he did the Muppets movie.
He did the Muppets Take Manhattan. That was his one right before this, which was like a huge success.
Yeah.
Which is also a very good film.
Very good. I just want to do all the Muppets movies.
I also want to say, talking of practical effects, that shout out to the set dressing team. The level of detail and like way that you're brought into the era from the set dressing. And I also loved how there was so much set dressing just to make it dirty. And I wanted to ask, are there any musicals that are as dirty as Little Shop of Horror?
I mean, Les Mis.
Sweeney.
Probably.
So I think Sweeney is the closest because even in Les Mis, it feels like it's like dirty in a historical way, but it's not dirty.
Yeah. Curated dirty.
Yeah. Whereas Sweeney, I think, because he sings the song about how like gross and dirty London is. I think that's the only one. So I think
it smells like rotting flesh every
right.
day.
So I feel like those two musicals to me are very much like in conversation, Sweeney Todd and Little Shop, because of the like slow descent into being a murderer and the like dirty inner city setting and
And there is like there is a comedy aspect in. It's more. I feel like it's a little bit. They lean into more of like the absurdist. I don't know. There's still like a funny aspect of Sweeney too. That Sweeney is famously funny. A laugh riot.
Sweeney is definitely darker than. I mean,
yes,
not just obviously, but like I think it leans in more into the dark elements than it does like acknowledging the comedy. But in regards to the set dressing, I want to shout out that I read that the almost everything on set, all the sets they got in like thrift stores in New York to like make it feel as real as possible. Which is so funny because it didn't need to feel real. I think that's the joke to me. But also this woman said that they wanted to get actual trash cans, like old trash cans. So she bought a bunch of like new ones and then like approached people when she saw that they had one outside of their house, and she was like, can I give you a new trash can and have your old trash can? So all of those trash cans were like basically bargained from people, which is very funny.
I think because there's something so theatrical about that really detailed set that exists, that to your point about like it doesn't have to be realistic, but it somehow makes it more like you're watching theater when you've got all those details, right? Yeah.
I also really like the tin ceiling in the floral shop. I really liked the tin ceiling. Because so many films, like there's not a ceiling in the room, like it just goes up into nothing. So I liked that shot of like you're from the baby Audrey's perspective when they're all like looking down at it. It's so there are like every bit of comedy in this movie, I think like really earns itself and like doesn't waste its time on it either. Like it like there's the one joke where the guy's like, hey, can you two quit singing for a second? And that joke is so funny. And it like shouldn't work, but it's so good.
Last reference to Cats, that joke is earned in a way that Cats does not earn the meta jokes. But the way that he comes, it's one of the best lines in the movie.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a critics score of 90%, and it says remixing Roger Corman's B-movie by way of the off-Broadway musical Little Shop of Horrors offers camp, horror, and catchy tunes in equal measure, plus some inspired cameos by the likes of Steve Martin and Bill Murray.
I wouldn't say Steve Martin is a cameo. I would say he's
I wouldn't
third bill, but whatever.
The New York Times review at the time from Janet Maslin, she says, as directed by the Muppet Master Frank Oz, this large-scale new film version has just the right mixture of playfulness, tunefulness, and bloodlust. Never has any screen killer done his job as innocently as Seymour Krelborn, the florist's assistant who tries so hard to accommodate the large potted creature living in the basement of his god and customer-forsaken shop that he cannot help thinking of passersby as plant food. So even like in her review, she's like, he's innocent, which I think is like, I think that misses the point. That's fine.
Or it's like that is the point of that, like the movie didn't make a clear decision on where he stands.
And then everyone's favorite Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. His review said all of the wonders of Little Shop of Horrors are accomplished with an offhand, casual charm. The movie doesn't labor its jokes or insist on its virtuoso special effects, but devotes its energies to seeming unforced and delightful. The big laughs, when they come, are explosive, such as the payoff of Martin's big musical number, but the quiet romantic moments are allowed to have their coy innocence. Again, somebody saying innocent.
That's a very good, I would say I think that does perfectly capture what at least I like about the movie. Yeah, it's everything that gives the big movie feel. They're not pointing like, look at what we're doing. It's like they're pointing at Seymour and Eleanor. So it's,
if I was writing a review of this film, I would say Little Shop of Horrors is 94 minutes long. And then that's it. And that's why it's got
And
5
that's why-
stars.
5 stars.
I don't have any. I was like gonna try to see if there were like any tweets about this movie.
Oh yeah, Twitter was.
But I realized they would be
banned back
so
then.
hard to deduce whether they were like tweeting about the film or like
Yeah.
the sound, like any kind of iteration of it.
Of
That
it,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
even gonna try this. This is dumb.
It's not the talk of the town right now, unfortunately.
Here's one audience member, me. I think I've come around and I think I do like it. I don't think it's something that I would like rewatch all the time. But I do think it like I think it's very well done. Even if I have some quibbles, I probably would. I know there is like a version you can like buy, I think on Blu-ray, where they have it has the director's cut basically, where you actually watch the like end as it was intended. And I think maybe I'd like that a little more if it just went into like the epic finale that this film does.
If you got to rewrite history and say you got to pick what the way the movie is right now, but pick the ending, A or B, which one would you pick?
I'd probably still pick B. The
Plants.
one where
Don't
they
eat-
die.
don't feed the plants.
Don't feed the plants. Because that also is like what it's about. It's about don't feed the plants.
Yeah.
And you
I
don't
agree.
get that if you get the other ending.
I would absolutely pick that, although I am one of the only people in the world that loves the second act of Into the Woods, so maybe I'm not the best test audience.
I love the second act of Into the Woods. It's why I love Into the Woods.
Yeah.
Also, when they show the girls, the Greek chorus walks by, that's not Tisha Campbell. That is a stand-in
it's a
because she
stand-in?
was out, she
was
wasn't
done-
available.
Oh.
Oh.
Was the
So you just see her legs. The third one's legs. That's
wait,
it.
which like in the original movie or the ending or the
in the
director's
in
cut?
the theatrical ending. You know how they're like standing outside the house, and then they like walk into the suburban house, and the girls walk by. And
yeah,
they
they
sing
walk
their last little
by.
ditty, and then it like pans
Oh.
down to the plant.
Yeah.
While it's panning down, you don't see
The faces, you
the
just hear
face-
them.
The last face,
Yeah.
because she wasn't available.
Oh, because I was gonna say in the director's cut ending, I love the moment of the like them walking out in front of the flag.
It's so funny.
It's so good, and the roll call of the cities.
Des Moines, Cleveland, Peoria.
It's so good. And Peoria! And just full belting, like don't feed the plants is so good.
It's very funny.
Having said that, I think I would still pick the theatrical ending.
Wow, really?
I think
You would.
so. I think
that's so
so.
funny.
I think I don't know. I got really sold it. I am the audience member that was like,
He was the
but I really wanted them to end up together.
He was the 87% that walked out and was like, not for me.
RJ is becoming the token normie on this podcast.
I know. The more we did start watching a CBS comedy called Ghosts and laughed at every joke, and we were like,
God, we are watching
we
a
are
CBS
normies.
show.
I heard that
Not
was
Paramount
good.
Plus, CBS.
I want to watch the original BBC version of it because there's some people on it
Yeah.
that I really like.
Yeah.
I bet it's really good.
But it's
They're fun. It's a really fun concept. Anything where they like make something spooky funny is always like, ooh, yeah.
a good thing for
The
us.
Ookie Spook.
Yes, the Scooby Doo.
The
It's the
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby Doo. It goes back to Scooby Doo. I think I still would pick the theatrical, just for that. I want the happy ending.
Well, listeners, write in and tell us if we should kick RJ off this podcast for having that opinion.
But I will say, I think like it at the time, if I saw it in the theaters, I think I would. I don't know. No, I do think like seeing the full originally intended ending, I think like the personality of like me wanting to be gagged at a RuPaul like episode of like I didn't expect that to happen, that does get flared in the original ending, that there is something fulfilling about it.
I will say this
too.
is a show that seems so fun to do. Like this,
Oh,
you would
yeah.
have so much fun doing this show.
Yeah.
Falling through a plant as you like scream that you're dying. Come on.
Come on.
Because you
Doing
got
it-
to Sweeney Todd, which
I
is like
did.
similar in
when
that
I
you get
played
to like die.
Yes, when I played Pirelli and Sweeney, I like pretended to fall and like
The only comedic character in Sweeney Todd.
I want someone to do a death drop from like 6 feet up, a la Aja now somehow as they die in Little Shop of Horrors.
yes. Is she gonna jump from there?
Oh gosh, she can jump from there. I'm so into voguing right now.
Yes, after you hit the shablam.
And that just gave me another idea for Audrey 1.
Vanessa Hudgens.
Vanessa Hudgens is Audrey 1, right?
We are going to answer the question that no one is asking. Who are we going to cast as Audrey 1 and Audrey 2 in 2021?
Is it obvious to say?
I am ready to go first.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I guess we're good.
I think what everybody wants, what everybody's been clamoring for ever since this piece of cinema dropped at our feet this year. People love Billy Porter and Camila Cabello.
Oh my god!
The people want to see it, honey. So I think Audrey 1 is Camila Cabello, and I think Billy Porter is. First of all, Billy Porter
should be Audrey 1 and Audrey 2. To be
Billy
honest,
Porter can be anyone. That's fine. Yeah.
Billy Porter is a one-man show of Little Shop of Horrors.
Absolutely,
I'd watch it.
Yeah.
Like Cher doing West Side Story. Have you guys seen that? Yeah.
Could that be an entire episode of this podcast?
I'll put it in the show notes too, but I'll put it on the list of
for the Patreon.
Those are my picks for Audrey 1 and
Okay.
Audrey 2. I think it would be bad because Camila Cabello's not good, but I do think I would watch it.
Yeah. RJ, do you have yours?
Yeah, I would pick like a Beanie Feldstein, I think, for Audrey 1.
Ooh, love her.
Because I think there's like a campiness that she can play with it. And Audrey 2, I mean, like, is Titus Burgess the obvious choice? Or like an Alex Newell? I think Alex Newell would sound amazing as Audrey 2. Those were probably I think I'd pick Alex.
In thinking about Audrey 1, I was like, who is serving woman the most in culture right now?
Sure.
And
is it Simone? Because I think it's Simone, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Simone would be amazing. Yeah. So one is, as I just said, Vanessa Hudgens, I think, would actually maybe do quite well at it. I don't know. I can never decide how I feel about Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah, I agree.
Out of left field.
And she doesn't know how she feels about the coronavirus, very famously.
Oh.
That was early days. We'll give her a pass.
No
on
one
that.
else knew.
I think in an alternative universe in which she can sing, Kim Kardashian.
As
woman. I'm thinking of her
woman.
Met Gala look where she had the tiny waist and right, like she gets it in an interesting way, and I am mad because she just hosted SNL as we're recording this, and I'm now thinking about what a missed opportunity to do a sketch in which Kim Kardashian is playing Audrey 1.
Audrey 1.
But my real answer is Ariana. I think in terms of serving, being a woman, high femme, and obviously can do the voice, do the vocals. I think Ariana Grande would be the real good choice for this.
Ariana Grande is already living that of being like her spoken voice is like, hey, and then like her actual when she sings is like,
the biggest struggle would just be how do you make her ponytail somehow more camp than it already is in order to put it in this musical.
It would be different flowers.
The real
every
problem
scene.
though is that she was bad in Hairspray Live. That's my only complaint.
She didn't.
But I cast Camila Cabello, so who am I to
True.
talk?
I was about to say. I think it felt like she missed the opportunity for Penny in Hairspray. Like she didn't like quite get the memo of like what Penny should have been.
Now that I'm
which is funny because Amanda was amazing as Penny.
When I'm thinking about it now is your idea of being like who's woman.
Yeah.
I think it's Lady Gaga.
I don't know though. I think Lady Gaga is.
You know, there could be 100 people in this room, Molly.
There could be 100 plants in this room.
Because I want to say Lady Gaga is challenging woman, which sounds like I am saying she's perfect for a camp movie, but it's like it's a different way of approaching it that I feel like is not quite right.
How about this? We all watch The House of Gucci and see what she does.
Do you know how long this movie is?
House of Gucci?
Yes.
I'm guessing it's not 90 minutes.
195 minutes. That is 3 hours and 15 minutes
Of Gucci.
of that accent.
Father, son, and the house of Gucci.
Who is your Audrey 2?
So this is controversial, and I don't know that I've heard enough of his voice to say for sure he could do it, but Lil Nas X?
Oh!
I think the depth of voice
He
could be really
deep
cool.
voice.
He has a very deep voice.
Yeah, I just don't know because I've heard him do more like hip hop, pop kind of stuff that I don't know if he could do the sort of like
Belty,
music theater. Yeah.
Soul,
But I think if he could, and I would suspect that he could, it would be really cool.
Obviously, like I think like trained. I mean, if they do this like as a live TV, I think it would be Lil Nas X. I think that would be a pretty.
You
good
wanted to get Gen Z in there.
Yeah.
I can't believe they did Rocky Horror Picture Show and they haven't done this. You know what I mean? For a live, because Fox did it.
I haven't seen
the last
any
one
of
I
the
saw
lives.
was Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, I've only seen a couple actually. I saw The Wiz, I saw Hairspray, and I saw Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we'll have to if they do another one.
Well,
someday,
we will be here.
We'll have to cover it, but I've never watched them because people always say they're bad, and so I don't want to.
No, they're not. They're never good. But
Yeah.
Jesus Christ Superstar was actually very good, which is like really crazy. Oh, we watched Rent live too.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we watched Rent live.
We watched the Rent dress rehearsal because the guy who played Roger broke his arm.
Yeah, something like that.
So they
didn't have an understudy.
They didn't have an understudy, so we had to
The
watch
only thing I know about Rent Live is that Valentina was in it.
Yes,
and not good.
Not good.
Yeah,
and that's the joke is that Valentina is trying to wipe every video off the internet.
I did understand that from the reads. I was able to pick up on that context.
Great. I think we've really wrapped it up.
In a pretty little plant.
Okay, thank you for listening to this episode. You can find, by the way, if you're curious about where to watch Little Shop of Horrors, you can watch it on HBO Max.
Yes, feel free to use our username and password. It is @Showgays.
No, don't do this. Cutting that. Thank you so much for listening, and
stay tuned
for what's coming up in November.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is @AdamNoecker on Twitter. RJ is @RJFoodRocks on Instagram. And Molly is @MollyMatiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgazemoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
This is your last careers lesson. So, does anyone have a realistic career plan? Tyson, Denzel, what about you?
YouTubers.
I keep telling you all, you gotta keep things real. Jamie. Jamie New.
Me?
What do you want to be?
A performer.
For a minute there, I had such high hopes for you.
Baby, I'm a hit. And you don't even know it.
What is wrong with our boy?
You remember when we was little and we used to play dress up? Well, for me, that's a game I don't want to stop playing.
I'm done with this. I wanted a son so badly. I got you.
The cold, empty morning.
I don't think I've got a dad anymore.
You've done nothing wrong, Jamie. You never did.
So, why do you want to be on stage?
I want to be a drag queen because it's all I ever dream of. And when I close my eyes, it's all I can see.
If Jamie wants to come to prom, he comes dressed just like all the other boys.
You are a freak. They made me feel so ugly. I'm scared.
You can't just be a boy in a dress, Jamie. A boy in a dress is something to be laughed at. A drag queen should be feared. You won't believe the power it gives you.
I don't just want to be one. I have to be one.
Stop waiting for permission to be you.
Do what you want to do. Be who you want to be.
You are the bravest person I know. You're like Beyonce.
No. Mom, do you ever wish I were just normal?
No. Never.
And you don't even know it. Your room's so tidy, I don't know how you do it.
I don't have as many dresses as you do.
Discovering voices. Building worlds. The Ampliverse.